Have you ever wondered why some women, regardless of their age or conventional beauty, have men completely captivated? Not just attracted, obsessed. These women don't chase, they don't beg, they don't manipulate. Yet men find themselves thinking about them constantly, drawn back to them again and again, unable to escape their pull. The secret isn't what modern dating advice teaches you. It's not about playing hard to get or using psychological tricks. It's about embodying an ancient principle that Lao Tzu described 2,500 years ago, the power of water. Today, I'm going to reveal why the woman who flows like water becomes absolutely irresistible to masculine energy and how you can become her. But first, let's talk about what you've probably been experiencing. Maybe you've been told to be more independent, to chase your goals, to never need anyone. You've been taught that strength means being hard, that power means being in control, that love means making things happen. So you text first, you plan the dates, you bring up the relationship talk, you try to secure commitment through logic and effort, and somehow the harder you try, the more he seems to slip away. You might blame yourself, thinking you're too much, too needy, too intense. Or maybe you've decided that men just can't handle a strong woman. But what if I told you that the problem isn't your strength? It's that you're using the wrong kind of strength. What if everything you've been taught about attraction is actually working against the deepest laws of masculine and feminine energy? What if there's an ancient way of being that makes resistance impossible? Not because you're manipulating, but because you're flowing with forces as natural as gravity itself. Lao Tzu wrote in the Ching, "Nothing in the world is softer than water, yet for overcoming the hard and strong, nothing can surpass it." He understood something that modern women have forgotten, that true power doesn't come from force, but from flow. Think about water for a moment. It doesn't fight the rock. It caresses it until the rock surrenders its shape. It doesn't argue with obstacles. It finds a way around, under, or through them. It doesn't demand to be noticed, yet it's the most essential element for all life. Water has no agenda, yet it shapes entire landscapes. It has no ego, yet it's unstoppable. It yields to everything, yet ultimately overcomes everything. This is Wu Wei, effortless action that achieves everything without struggle. When a woman embodies water's essence in relationships, something profound happens. She stops swimming upstream against masculine nature and starts flowing with it. She stops trying to control the current and becomes the current itself. But here's what most women don't understand. Flowing like water doesn't mean being passive or weak. Water carved the Grand Canyon. Water moves mountains. Water is patient, persistent, and ultimately unstoppable. But it never forces, never fights, never demands. The woman who flows like water understands that masculine energy is like fire. It needs space to burn, oxygen to breathe, freedom to dance. When you try to control fire, you smother it. But when you flow around it like water, you don't extinguish it. You make it burn brighter. For generations, women have been taught to embody masculine energy to succeed in a masculine world. You've learned to be the initiator, the planner, the pursuer. You've been told that waiting is weakness, that flowing is passivity, that receptivity is outdated. But Lao Tzu teaches us about yin and yang, complementary forces that create harmony through their differences, not their similarities. When feminine energy tries to become masculine energy, the natural polarity that creates attraction disappears. Think about it. When you're constantly in your yang energy, planning, controlling, initiating, where does that leave room for his yang energy to express itself? When you're always the one texting first, making plans, bringing up the future, you're unconsciously communicating that you don't trust him to lead, to pursue, to show up. This isn't about gender roles or being submissive. This is about understanding energy dynamics that are as old as the cosmos itself. Fire and water don't compete, they dance. The sun doesn't try to be the moon. They create day and night together through their differences. The woman who flows like water understands that her power lies not in matching his energy, but in being so completely herself that she naturally calls forth his masculine essence. She doesn't chase because she doesn't need to. Her very being creates a gravitational pull. But here's where it gets deeper. Most women resist this because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they stop controlling, everything will fall apart. They're afraid that if they stop initiating, nothing will happen. They're afraid that flowing means losing themselves. These fears come from a wound. The wound of not trusting that you're enough just as you are. The wound that says love must be earned through effort rather than received through being. The wound that believes if you're not constantly doing something, you have no value. But what if I told you that this fear is the very thing keeping you from the love you desire? What if your need to control is actually creating the chaos you're trying to prevent? Lao Tzu teaches, the sage does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness. The woman who flows like water doesn't try to force love. She becomes so magnetic that love flows to her naturally. Here's what this looks like in practice. When he doesn't text for a day, instead of analyzing or pursuing, she flows into her own life so completely that his absence becomes irrelevant. She doesn't punish or reward. She simply flows where her energy is welcomed. When he seems distant, instead of demanding connection, she gives him space to miss her. Like water, she doesn't cling to the shore. She trusts the current of her own worth to carry her where she needs to go. When he's unsure about commitment, instead of pressuring or convincing, she flows with such confidence in her own value that his uncertainty becomes his problem to solve, not hers to fix. This isn't manipulation, it's alignment with natural law. Water doesn't try to convince the riverbank to contain it. It simply flows, and the riverbank naturally shapes itself around the water's path. The woman who embodies this principle becomes absolutely irresistible because she's not trying to be anything other than herself. She's not performing femininity. She's being it. She's not strategizing attraction. She's living it. Men can sense this authenticity immediately. They can feel the difference between a woman who's trying to get something from them and a woman who's simply being with them. The first creates pressure and resistance. The second creates magnetism and desire. When you flow like water, you stop needing him to be different and start accepting him as he is. Paradoxically, this acceptance often inspires him to become his best self. Not because you demanded it, but because your flow created space for his own growth. But there are even deeper secrets that Lao Tzu understood about water's power. Secrets that the ancient Taoist masters knew about feminine energy that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover. Water has no fixed shape, yet it can take any form. The woman who flows like water doesn't try to fit into his expectations. She flows so authentically that he finds himself adapting to honor her true nature. Water always seeks the lowest place, yet it nourishes all life. The woman who embodies this principle doesn't need to be the star of every story. She flows with such grace that she becomes the source that feeds everything around her. Water is transparent, yet it reflects everything perfectly. The woman who flows like water doesn't hide behind masks or games. Her transparency becomes a mirror that shows him who he could be at his highest potential. This is why he can't escape her. It's not because she's chasing him or manipulating him. It's because she's become like water, essential, nourishing, and impossible to live without. Think about the women in your life who embody this energy. They're not necessarily the loudest or the most dramatic. They're the ones who make you feel peaceful yet energized, accepted yet inspired to grow. They don't demand attention. They naturally receive it because their presence is like water in a desert. These women understand something profound, that the feminine principle isn't about doing, it's about being. It's not about having, it's about flowing. It's not about controlling, it's about trusting. When you embody this energy, you stop exhausting yourself trying to make love happen and start allowing love to flow to you naturally. You stop depleting your energy in pursuit and start cultivating the magnetic field that makes pursuit unnecessary. Imagine what your relationships would look like if you embodied water's principles completely. Instead of anxiety about his intentions, you'd feel peaceful, knowing that water always finds its right level. Instead of fear about losing him, you'd trust that what's meant for you cannot pass you by. Instead of checking your phone constantly, you'd flow so deeply into your own life that his communication becomes a pleasant addition rather than a necessary validation. Instead of analyzing every interaction, you'd trust the natural rhythm of connection in space. Instead of trying to be perfect, you'd flow with such authenticity that your imperfections become part of your charm. Instead of competing with other women, you'd understand that water doesn't compete. It simply flows where it's meant to go. This transformation isn't about changing who you are. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. It's about returning to your natural state of flow, where love isn't something you chase, but something you allow. When you become the woman who flows like water, several things happen. First, you stop attracting men who need to be convinced of your worth and start magnetizing those who recognize it immediately. Second, you stop exhausting yourself in relationships and start feeling energized by them. Real love doesn't drain, it flows and replenishes. Third, you stop fearing abandonment, because you understand that water never truly leaves. It simply changes form and continues its journey. The man who belongs in your life won't need to be caught. He'll recognize the oasis of peace and authenticity you've become and choose to stay, not from obligation, but from genuine desire. But here's the most beautiful part. When you embody water's essence, you stop needing any specific man to love you, because you've learned to flow with the love that you are. And paradoxically, this is exactly what makes you irresistible. This ancient wisdom that Lao Tzu taught isn't just about relationships. It's about returning to your true nature as a woman. It's about remembering that your greatest power has never been in forcing, but in flowing. Not in demanding, but in drawing. Not in chasing, but in choosing. The path of water isn't always easy. There will be times when your ego wants to control, when your fear wants to force, when your wounds want to pursue. But each time you choose to flow instead, you strengthen your connection to this ancient power. Start today with one simple practice. The next time you feel the urge to text him first, to make the plan, to bring up the conversation, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what would water do? Then flow with that wisdom. Notice how your energy shifts when you stop pushing against the current and start moving with it. Notice how differently he responds when you're flowing rather than forcing. Notice how much more peaceful and powerful you feel when you're aligned with your true nature. This is just the beginning of understanding the profound wisdom that Lao Tzu embedded in the Tao Te Ching about feminine power. There are deeper secrets about timing, about receptivity, about the kind of presence that makes a woman unforgettable. If this message resonated with something deep in your soul, if you felt a recognition of truth that you've always known but perhaps forgotten, then you're ready for this ancient path. Like this video if you're ready to stop swimming upstream and start flowing with the current of your true power. Comment below and tell me, what would change in your love life if you truly embodied water's principles? And subscribe to this channel, because we're going to explore more of these timeless secrets that can transform not just your relationships, but your entire experience of being a woman in this world. Remember, you were never meant to force love. You were meant to flow with it. And when you do, you become absolutely irresistible. Not because you're trying to be, but because you're being who you truly are. The ancient masters knew this secret. Now you do too.